Okay, good morning and good afternoon, everyone. Happy World Migratory Bird Day. Welcome to today's webinar, World Migratory Bird Day 2020 EAAFP Virtual Fun Day. This is Vivian Fu, Communication Officer of EAAFP Secretariat, and I am the moderator for today's webinar. I wish everyone is staying at home and staying safe from the COVID-19. Even though we have to stay at home, we can still enjoy a Saturday and to celebrate the World Migratory Bird Day. World Migratory Bird Day is an annual global awareness raising campaign led by the Convention on Migratory Species (CMS), the African Eurasian Water Bird Agreement (IWA), and the Environment for the Americas. This event highlights the ecological importance for migratory birds. This year, the theme of the World Migratory Bird Day is Birds Connect Our World. For this theme, today we are very honored to have invited 4 talented artists to bring to you a webinar which you will enjoy: an interesting story of redneck extinct by storyteller Jackie Kerin, a gallery tour of print arts about the flyway guided by Kate Gorringe-Smith, pilot's illustrator Millie Formby telling us her flying journey with the birds, and a concert tracing the odyssey of shorebirds by Bowerbird Collective. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few items so you know how to participate in today's event. In your control panel of your computer screen, you will see a notepad icon. This is the handout section. You can find the handouts of the GoToWebinar attendee troubleshooting notes and a fact sheet about EAAFP. You are listening using your computer's speaker system by default. We have over 150 attendees from all over the world today. So due to the large audience attending, you will have the opportunity to submit text question to the performers by typing your question into the question panel of your control panel. We will collect these questions and address them during the Q&A section at the end of the presentations. So let's move on to our first section. I would like to share a message by our Chief Executive, Mr. Doug Watkins, to mark the opening of this webinar section for World Migratory Bird Day.
Welcome, I'm Doug Watkins, the Chief Executive of the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership. This message is about celebrating the 2020 World Migratory Bird Day. Most populations of migratory birds, and particularly migratory water birds, migrate to nest in the northern regions of the world in its summer, and then as the northern summer cools, they need to migrate south again. There are 3 groupings of global flyways for migratory water birds: the Americas, Africa, Eurasia, and Asia, Australasia. World Migratory Bird Day is a global awareness-raising campaign formally led by the Convention on Migratory Species Secretariat, the African Eurasian Waterbird Agreement Secretariat, and Environment for the Americas. World Migratory Bird Day is an excellent tool to promote and call for action for the conservation of migratory water birds. It is celebrated in May and October to match the times that birds are migrating north and south. This year's global theme for World Migratory Bird Day is Birds Connect the World. In the East Asian Australasian Flyway, the Flyway Partnership has been stepping up to lead on World Migratory Bird Day since 2006. The East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership is a voluntary framework aimed to conserve migratory water birds, their habitats, and the ecosystem services these sites provide for local communities. The partnership involves 37 partners consisting of 18 national governments, 6 intergovernmental organisations, 11 international NGOs, 1 international organisation and 1 international corporate. In the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership, the partnership is continuing to develop a network of internationally important sites for migratory water birds. The Flyway site network spans 18 countries from the Arctic nesting areas through the staging and non-breeding sites in North Asia and Southeast Asia, then on to non-breeding sites in Australia and New Zealand. The site network has now grown to 147 sites that connect the Flyway. Through various activities such as providing the World Migratory Bird Day Small Grants Fund and production of promotional materials in a number of languages, we're facilitating awareness raising and education for the conservation of migratory water birds. In this time of COVID-19, with the need for physical distancing, we're not able to conduct our usual public events at key wetlands, so instead we come to you on the internet. The East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership Secretariat and our partners are preparing a series of online activities to celebrate World Migratory Bird Day. Please enjoy and do follow up with us if you would like to be more involved in the flyway conservation effort. Thank you.
So next, we are going to launch the EAAFP World Migratory Bird Day video. You are actually the first audience to watch this, so please enjoy.
It was a chilly day, but I felt all warm inside because I just tagged my first great nut. His feathers were so soft and I could feel his little heart beating. His tag may say EAA, but he's beak to me. It's amazing that something so fragile was going on such a tough journey. But he wasn't going alone. From here in Australia all the way to Russia, I was tracking him every step of the way. Watching as he flew with his friends, harnessed tailwinds, flapped all the way to the Yellow Sea. Here he found stopover sites, nature's motels. Here he could rest and recharge, full of tasty worms, friends to chat. Beak? I contacted other researchers and posted messages to the birdwatching communities, but nobody had seen Beak. So I travelled after Beak to see what happened. Maybe he flew into a building? Maybe someone had demolished the site. He could have eaten polluted food or couldn't find any food at all. I arrived at the location where his signal disappeared, and the local ranger told me they caught a hunter here about a week ago, but no sign of Beak. Such a small bird in such a big world. Where are you, little buddy? Hello. A researcher from Russia called me. And guess what? He saw Beak. Victor took me to where he spotted Beak, deep in the Arctic tundra of the Russian Far East. Beak! And he wasn't alone. In a few months, Beak and his family will be flying back to Australia. That's over 5,000 kilometers, full of dangers like these. Without better protection and management of sites along its migratory route, how can we make sure they get home safely? I hope to see you back in Australia, little buddy.
You can help to protect great knot and other migratory water birds. Tell others about the importance of protecting them and the habitats they need to survive. Join and promote World Migratory Bird Day activities.
So I hope you enjoyed the video. This video is now uploaded to the YouTube now, and if your country wants to have it in your language, you can let us know, and then we can provide a clean version for you to edit. Now it's the show time of our performers. So let me introduce our first speakers today, Miss Jackie Kerin. Jackie is a storyteller and working in the oral tradition and as an author of several nonfiction illustrated books for children. She has a deep interest in using her skills to bring people, especially children, closer to the nature, to support their curiosity and encourage them to become an agent for a better, kinder world. Today, she is bringing us a story, Tom the Redneck Stings, using Kamishibai, the paper drama from Japan. Jackie, the screen is yours.
Hello. Hello, everyone, and thank you, Vivian, and a happy World Migratory Bird Day to all of you, wherever you are on the flyway. And I'd like to say a special hello to my friends at Sungai Buloh in Singapore, and a thank you to the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership for organising this wonderful event. Now, for the young ones who are with us today, I have made a picture to show you exactly where I am on the flyway. I'm in Australia, in the southeast corner, in Melbourne, just 12 k's I am from the central business district on the west side of the river, where there's a small chain of wetlands that provide a home for many migratory shorebirds over the summer. I live on the traditional lands of the Bunwurrung people, a place once known as Kot Bork Bork, the place of the she oaks. Now, just a short walk from the end of my street is a tiny wetland called Sandy Point. And every spring, regular as clockwork, about 50 redneck stints arrive to spend the summer. A while ago, I began telling stories to raise awareness for our local wetlands and birds and to support the rangers and volunteers who work so hard. Now, the story I'm going to tell you is the most special story that I tell because it's travelled the flyway from Japan to Australia. It's a Kamishibai story, Kami, paper, Shibai, theatre or drama. It was created by the Kamishibai project of the Atsuhigata Nature Observation Centre of Narashino City, Japan. The story was a gift to Boondall Wetlands in Moreton Bay, Queensland, around here. And with kind permission, it was sent all the way down the flyway to me here in Melbourne. Now, the story has changed a little, as stories do, and I've adapted it over time, so it's easier for children living in Australia to connect with. So, let me tell you the story. Are you comfy? Way up on the Arctic tundra, a tiny little redneck stint has made a scrape in the ground. She's lined it with leaves and grass, and she's laid 4 eggs. Now, together with her mate, she will take great care of these eggs for 22 days until they hatch. Now, I'm going to call one of these chicks Tom, for no other reason than I was told that, well, that's his name. Now, the moment Tom and his brothers and sisters have hatched, their mother takes off, her work is done, but she's leaving them in the very capable hands of their father. And Tom, well, he eats and he eats and he eats until soon he's round and fat as a ball. At 4 weeks of age, Tom has fledged. He can fly. His father comes to his chicks and he says, "Right, everyone, it's time we left Siberia, took to the East Asian Australasian flyway and made the great journey south, all the way to Australia." Tom is very excited. The flyway. Oh, how exciting. That means I finally get to see all those countries. I get to see China, Mongolia, Korea, Japan, Thailand. Oh, steady on, Tom, steady on. We will visit some of those places, but Australia is a long way south. Suddenly, Tom is not so sure. I don't know if I want to leave Siberia. I mean, this is my home. I've lived here my whole life. You know, that's like 4 weeks. Tom, let me tell you, Siberia is pleasant enough in the summer, but in winter it gets very, very cold. cold. So the redneck stints take to the sky. Fueled by all that fat he's carrying, Tom slices through the air. He looks over his shoulder at Siberia, the only home he's ever known, disappearing behind him. They fly through the days. And they fly through the nights. They fly for so long that Tom, he grows weary and falls to the back of the flock. Help me, somebody, help me, I can't keep up. Keep flying, Tom, keep flying. It won't be long before we get to one of the best restaurants on the flyway. I can't keep going, I can't. When are we going to get there? Tom, they've got polychaete worms. Polychaete worms. They've got arthropods. Arthropods. And sure enough, it's not long before they arrive at one of the best restaurants on the flyway, the Yatsuhigata Nature Observation Center, Narashino City, Japan. And when they get there, down they swoop, and Tom, well, he eats and he eats and he eats until, well, soon he's round and fat as a ball. Polychaete worm. Arthropod. Yum, 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 yum. Polychaete worm. Why, hello. Tom feels a shadow pass over him. Who are you? I am the grey heron, and I am the largest bird in Yatsuhigata. And you, my friend, I don't wish to be rude, but you're very, very small. Are you planning on staying, or is this just a flying visit? Oh, I think we'll stay at Yatsuhigata. It's an excellent place, and you've got really the best polychaete worms. But later that night, come on, everybody, come on. It's time we left Yatsuhigata and continued our journey south along the flyway to Australia. Oh, I don't think I want to leave Yatsuhigata. They've got excellent polychaete worms. Tom, let me tell you, Yatsuhigata is pleasant enough in summer, but in winter it gets very, very C-O-L-D, cold. So once again, the redneck stints take to the sky. They fly over a vast ocean. They visit islands. But there are perils on the way. And some will not make it. But Tom, he makes it. And in September, he arrives at Sandy Point, a little wetland at the end of my street, 12 kilometers from Melbourne. And when he gets there, he eats and he eats and he eats and he eats until soon he's round and fat as a ball. But come March, April, the days get a little shorter and the mornings can actually be quite C-O-L-D, cold. So once again, the redneck stints take to the sky. And this time they fly north. Tom may only weigh as much as a piece of toast, but in his lifetime, he will travel the distance to the moon and back again. So there you are. There is the story of Tom, the red-necked stint. This Kamishibai that I tell is loved by children and adults wherever I go. And it's done more to raise awareness for migratory shorebirds in my area than anything else I've tried. Now, I usually tell the story with my very good friend, Sarah De Pasquale, a wonderfully talented violinist, but due to the virus, of course, she couldn't be with me today. Now, I believe, I've been told that we have some volunteers from Yatsuhigata with us today. So I would like to take this opportunity to thank you from my heart for sharing the story. And now we have connected, I would like one day to make you a Kamishibai story from Australia to share at the Yatsuhigata Nature Observation Centre. But now, before I finish, I have a short video to show you of the little wetland at the end of my street, Sandy Point. I went for a walk with my phone the other day. I wanted to share with you all my special place on the flyway. If you can show the video, that would be wonderful. Thank you, Vivian. This is Sandy Point, my place on the flyway. And if I scroll down the sign here, you will see, there he is, Tom, the red-necked stint. And this is where the stints come every year in springtime. There's about 50 of them. They come and feed in the mud, just here at Sandy Point. Lots of birds enjoy this mud. We see black swans, ducks, ibis, egrets, pelicans, grebes. You might see an Arctic jager in the sky. Several kinds of terns. You can see there how Sandy Point reaches out into the water. And if I'm just moving slowly, turning the camera, you'll see the big cranes, big ship. And there's the city. There's Melbourne. And that's how close Sandy Point is to the city. You can see the mangroves. Now I'm going to turn around and walk back home along the path. It's a short walk from my house to Sandy Point. This is one of my most favourite places to come in the world. My place on the flyway.
So thank you, Jackie, for the wonderful story about Tom the red-necked stint. Can you imagine such a small bird can overcome so many different challenges on their migration routes? Okay, now I would like to invite our next speaker, Miss Kate Gorringe-Smith. Kate is a practicing artist with a background in zoology. Kate's printing artwork often references migratory shorebirds to illustrate the environmental connection that links us individually and globally. And she has initiated 3 major art projects, including the Flyway Print Exchange Project. This project linked about 20 artists from Australia up to Alaska in the US to work together and to present how inspiring the migratory water birds are. So please welcome Kate.
Thank you so much, Vivian, and thank you to the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership for hosting this webinar today. It's so exciting and such an honour to be here, and welcome to everybody who's listening from their home or their work. So today for World Migratory Bird Day 2020, we're discussing how birds connect our world, and of course migratory shorebirds literally connect our world by making their beautiful migrations every year. Here in Australia, we have birds that travel every year up to Alaska and Siberia, so they're encircling the entire globe every single year, and through time and through space, because of course they've been doing these flights for millennia. So they also connect individuals and communities. Here we are today together, gathered to celebrate shorebirds and other birds that migrate. And then there's the wonderful community of scientists, volunteers and bird watchers who uncover and tell the stories and share the stories with us of these birds so that we can all join in together and celebrate them and the marvels of their migrations and how far they fly and how they manage to navigate through, you know, stars and nights and days and traverse the globe. So the more people who connect with migratory birds or who are connected by them, the better, of course, because knowledge leads to wonder. Of course, the more you know about these birds, the more amazing they become. Wonder leads to caring, and caring leads to action, and that's what we need is action on the ground to preserve their habitat throughout the flyway to make sure the birds keep flying. So how can artists help with this particular challenge? How can artists help birds connect our world? Well, these are brown birds in a brown landscape. If you've been out watching shorebirds, you'll know how hard they are to identify, how hard they are even to see, and how little known they are compared to the other birds that frequent our shorelines. So artists can take the stories that the scientists have uncovered and they can amplify them. They can share them with different audiences. And we can also make the birds visible. I mean, that's what visual artists do, is they make things visible. So we can make pictures of the birds, literally, and put them in galleries and introduce people to them and to their needs and to their flights and share the wonder with a broader audience. And we can also weave our own personal stories into the stories of the birds, personal migration stories or stories about the habitat that might be special to us. So in all these ways, artists can, be of service to the shorebird community, the scientists and the shorebirds themselves, I hope. So artists are kind of at the vanguard of this. Then the artists who are making the work about the shorebirds pass on their excitement to their friends and family. And then, of course, once the works are in a gallery, you've got all the visitors to the gallery. And in galleries, you can host talks and you can host tours and you can host visits to local wetlands. So there's a lot of potential ways for artists and the artistic community to help birds connect our world. And as Vivian was saying, in 2014, I started up an art project called the Flyway Print Exchange, which is still being exhibited today. It's been in 23 exhibitions all around Australia and also Indonesia and Hong Kong and Singapore. And I'm going to share with you the works from that project today. And it included 20 artists from 9 different flyway countries. So Vivian, if we could perhaps swap to the PowerPoint and I'll show people those beautiful prints that were made. So this is a mosaic of all the prints. So I'm a printmaker, and the reason that these are all prints is because the print medium is reproducible. It just means you've made an image on one surface, so it could be wood, or it could be a silk screen, or it could be lino, or it could be metal, or a number of other surfaces, and you print that onto paper. So one reason, so I'm a printmaker, and I found 20 printmakers from 9 of the 23 flyway countries to all join in the project with me and to make prints about the flyway. So these are all the prints together. And of course, the challenge is to try and convey to people who may not ever have heard of shorebirds the wonder of how these birds will travel from somewhere like Roebuck Bay in Broome in Western Australia all the way to this vastly different landscape on the other side of the world. So every artist printed 30 prints. Every artist got a set of all the other artists' prints, so they got them in a box. Every artist owns all these works. And we had 6 left over to sell, to raise some money, to exhibit, and for one other reason, which I'll tell you about at the end, which also wrapped up the purpose of the project, to sort of convey as much as possible about these birds to people coming into galleries. So we're going to start down in the south, because I'm in the south. We're going to start with Celia Walker in New Zealand, whose beautiful print, Te Kawaka is its title, and that's the Maori name for the bar-tailed godwit, which is a very special bird for the Maori people, who have a couple of myths surrounding the godwit, because of course they could never find the bird's nest, so it was a bird of great mystery. And I believe that the Maori belief in legend was that when the godwits left the shores of New Zealand every year, they took with them the souls of the dead. The other Maori legend, I believe, is that the first Maori people to come to New Zealand followed the godwits as they flew, because they knew that birds would be flying to land. So that's a beautiful connection. Now we've moved up the flyway a little bit to Melbourne, Australia. Helen Coaches Edwards is a friend of mine that when we do a lot of art projects together, and her print Traveller, of course, is about how the maps that the birds navigate every year are embedded in their hearts and their minds. They don't have a map book to follow. It's all built within them from, you know, thousands of years of travelling the flyway. Then there's my print, and I've always been so fascinated by the way the birds travel through the sky. My father was actually a navigator in World War II, and so navigating has always been a thing of, I guess, mystery and romance to me. And this print is about the birds. If you look at it, it's based on a 19th century map of the Milky Way. But if you look closely, some of those stars are actually birds, because the birds have been flying for so long through these starry skies that the birds have become imprinted, just like the stars in the maps of our minds. Moving on to Alexis, who's another Melbourne artist, and this beautiful print that she did is based on a poem by A.D. Hope called Death of a Bird. And I actually thought it's such a beautiful poem and such a beautiful, delicate print. I thought I might just read you a stanza from the poem to convey to you why she was so taken with the poem. Year after year, a speck on the map, divided by a whole hemisphere, summons her to come, season after season, sure and safely guided. Going away, she is also coming home. And that's just a part of the poem, but it's a beautiful rendering of the pull of these 2 different homes that the birds have every year. You know, as soon as they get to one place, they're really preparing to head back to the other place. Here's Vida Pearson's beautiful lino cut of Terek sandpipers. And here's a picture of Vida pulling a print. So this is just the kind of equipment that a lot of our artists in this project would have used. That's a printing press, and you can see on the flat bed of the press the shiny inked up surface of her print, and she would have carved out the image of the pelican. Here's also a photo from Vida's surrounding landscape. This is the landscape surrounding her studio, and it's just showing you all these artists were in completely different landscapes in completely different parts of the world. And it's exciting that the project, but also the birds, draw us all together with their migrations. We've moved up a bit farther north now. Amanda O'Sullivan's from Queensland, and she was inspired by flocks of red knots. And if you could see this print in real life, you'd see the birds at the top of the page of the print are printed in silver. And if you tilt the paper back and forward, the silver birds appear and disappear. And if you've ever watched a flock of birds flying, you'll know that as they wheel through the sky, they do appear and disappear. And that's what Amanda was trying to capture in this silkscreen print. And here she is in her studio. And here are the prints. So she's editioned the prints, 30 of them, and they're drying on the rack in her studio. Now we're moving to the Northern Territory, to Warralunga Art Centre in Borroloola, which is right on the far northern coast of the Northern Territory. 900 kilometres east of Darwin. So for some of you, that'll convey how far away that is from any major towns. I was really lucky to work with the artists of Warralunga because I really wanted to work with Indigenous artists if possible in the project, because of course they are the people who are the most connected to the land and would know all about the comings and goings of their migratory shorebirds. So Gret did this lovely lino cut of the birds on the mudflats, the grey-tailed tattler, one of their local birds, which occurs up in Borroloola, in this near there in the Sir Edward Pellew Islands. Sharons, which I know is a little bit tricky to see, but it's a beautiful eastern curlew against a watercolour background. And also it was lovely to have the names of the birds in language, so that was also representing the Indigenous artists. And lastly, Violet. So a lot of Indigenous artists use ochre, which is just like the powder from the ochre, the rocks, and it occurs in a whole spectrum of beautiful colours. So Violet used a layer of ochre as the base of her print, and it blooms through the white ink of the print, and she did ruddy turnstones, and it creates this lovely pattern which is different in each print. And now we've headed north and we're in Indonesia, flying slowly up the flyway, where Parlevi has done a beautiful strong woodcut of a wader bird. And here's Parlevi working in his studio. And here now we're in Singapore with Tam Puisan, who, speaking of connections along the flyway, Puisan has now become a friend, and Jackie Kerin, who you heard telling her stories before, she actually was doing a storytelling workshop in Singapore, and I sent her Puisan's details and they got in contact, and Puisan showed her around his beloved Sungai Buloh wetlands, where he has been a guide and a volunteer artist since 2002. So that's a lovely connection, and he's been here since to Melbourne, and Jackie and I have met him and shown him some of our shorebird habitat near where Jackie lives. And this was the very first lino cut that Puisan ever did, which was also a really, really lovely gift to the project. Now, Puisan has done a hand-coloured lino cut. Here's his initial drawing of the ruddy turnstone, and here he's transferred that to a lino block, and he's about to cut it. And here he is at home. He's hand colouring it, so that means that he's actually watercolouring his picture, the colours in, rather than it being on separate blocks. Up again to India, I think Radhika was the youngest of our artists, and her print, The Big Flight, is it's a digital print, and it tells the story of the shorebird's migration as a little cartoon. And Kavita Shah is also from India, and this stencil print, Bye Bye Baby, is based on the Indian tradition of the henna on the hands for a bride, and I like to think that it represents how we all need to hold hands along the flyway to keep the shorebirds flying. It needs to be a linked chain of held hands, of caring. Okay, further north again, up to Guangdong province in China. Fen Jianming has done the most beautiful etching. So this is on a metal base, and it captures, he's got geese and he's also got some little shorebirds in the foreground there. It's a brooding picture, I think, that captures the idea of the challenges the birds face as they fly along the flyway, but it also captures the magic. You know, we see them go and they appear in Alaska or Siberia, and it's like a magic doorway. I mean, it's not, you know, obviously they're facing multiple challenges and it's a hard road, but it's still a lovely portrayal of sort of the magic of bird migration. And Xiaohua from China as well, it's very similar colours with the birds flying across, you know, mountainous landscapes. And his is based on a popular song called The Wind Heard My Song. And this, as you can see on the right-hand side, there is the metal plate from which he took the print that he would have etched. And here he is signing his prints as well. And I'm still in touch with Xiaohua. He has a beautiful printmaking studio in China, and I hear from him quite often, which is lovely. Ni Jianming, I think, was the oldest participant in the project, and he's very well known in his province in China. And it's a woodcut water print. And I've got a lovely picture of the block that he was printing from, which shows you the detail of the print that he carved out of wood before printing it onto the paper. And here he is. He broke his arm, unfortunately, during the process, not because of the process, but at the same time. And so he had to sign his prints from his hospital bed, which showed great dedication. So that was a bit sad, but he did very well. Now we're up to South Korea, and there's a wonderful print by Hyun-tae Lee. That's just called Birds, and you've got the blue horizon there, which could be water. And I love this print because that little, you can just see the little words bird and the arrow, and in each print that's in a different place on the piece of paper. And he told me that what that is when he's bird watching, he watches the birds and he sees them flying, and he'll watch them and watch them and watch them until they completely disappear. And the little arrow is pointing to the place where the birds became invisible and they finally just flew out of sight, and that's how long he watched them for, which I think is just lovely and just captures that experience that we've all had. Here he is working in his studio and inking up some of that beautiful blue ink for the horizon line at the bottom of his print. Kyoko Imazu is from Japan, and this is another beautiful etching. It's done in from 2 plates, so that you get that lovely the fullness of the figure of the eastern curlew. Excuse me. They're the 2 plates that she drew up, so it would have been, each one would have been printed in a different colour brown to create that effect of that lovely, very, very lively looking eastern curlew. And now here we are up in Alaska with a silkscreen print by Gary Collitz, who was working at the Anchorage University up there at the time that he made this print. And I think, you know, as soon as you see this print from the colours, it's just got that chill. You know you're not in Australia anymore, or in, you know, tropical South Asia, or you're up in Alaska where it's chilly in the dawn, and maybe the birds have just come at the beginning of the summer, or they're just getting ready to go as it gets a bit too chilly for them. And you've got that beautiful curving S in the sky of how they've just landed on the mud flats, which are shining with the water just receding now. And lastly, we've got Edwin Miguel, who's also from Alaska in the USA. And Ed is also Indigenous American, so it was great to have him taking part with his sort of knowledge of the area and history of his people being there. His mum is one of the Inupiat of Point Hope, which is one of the little peninsulas on the very far western edge of Alaska that's reaching out towards Siberia, and there are people whose livelihoods are based on fishing. And so here's a depiction of someone out in their canoe, and of course the curlew flying through the sky, maybe at the full moon, you know, indicating that now warmer days are on their way, and maybe, you know, more plentiful fishing. And yeah, so that's a beautiful array of works that are all very personal, all inspired by the flyway and how we're all connected by birds. And the last thing I have to tell you is that one of the prints, so in an exhibition, if you see an exhibition of the Flyway Print Exchange, you'll see the pristine prints, and they're framed, like the one on the left of Hyun-tae there. And on the right is a travelled print. So one of each of those prints was actually folded up and tied or sticky taped and addressed and stamped, and it did the actual journey of the birds themselves. So that print was posted from me to Celia down in New Zealand, in Auckland. She posted it to Tam Pui San in Singapore, and from Pui San it went up to Gary in Alaska, and then Gary posted them back to me. And I had the beautiful job of unfolding them, and they were all creased and worn and torn, like you can see here, with stamps. But the lovely thing about it is you can't have the birds themselves, of course, in the gallery. And the birds can't speak for themselves. So we're trying to speak for the birds. We're trying to convey how wonderful they are, how special they are, and how extraordinary their habitat is, and how we're all connected to their homes from our homes. And so these prints had, you know, they're worn and torn like the feathers of the birds. Yeah, and they have done this journey, and people, we're hoping that it will make people think more deeply about the physical reality of that journey, that tiny bird going so far year after year after year. Yeah, so that was the project, and it was a great project to do, and it was lovely to be connected. And as I say, it's still being exhibited, and well, birds just continue to connect us all. So I think that's all I wanted to say. Thank you so much for having me, Vivian, today, and for letting me join everybody here.
I wouldn't have known that there are so many beautiful stories behind the artwork, and this project has drawn people from different countries in the flyway, and people are linked, and they can also travel through that artwork. So people, if you are interested in exhibiting this wonderful artwork, yeah, you can contact Kate. So now I would like to move our presentation to our third speaker today, Ms. Millie Formby. This young talented lady is a zoologist and a recreational pilot who has a background in arts and is an illustrator of the children's book called Winged Threads, which is co-authored with Jackie Kerin, our first speaker. Millie will share her real-life story of how shorebirds taught her and turned her into a pilot. So Millie, the screen is yours.
Thanks, Vivian, and thank you to the East Asian Australasian Flyway Partnership too for inviting me to speak today, and happy World Migratory Bird Day to everyone who's joining us along the flyway today. It's really exciting to be able to speak to you today. Yeah, I'll jump to my presentation now. Thanks, Vivian. Okay. Okay. So migratory shorebirds are magical birds that get under your skin and, oops, I've gone too far. And their journeys inspire us to create and do things out of the ordinary, which I think today's presentation is a testament to. And I'm going to share with you today my own story of how shorebirds taught me that we're all connected through land and sea and sky, and inspired me to become a pilot. So I'm originally from Gippsland in Victoria, which is near Melbourne, where Jackie is from. And my background is originally in the arts and also behavioural ecology. But I became an artist before I became a scientist, and I studied illustration at TAFE and then completed a Bachelor of Visual Arts at Monash University in Caulfield, where I majored in tapestry, of all things. And I then worked as a tapestry weaver for just over 7 years at the Australian Tapestry Workshop in South Melbourne. And these images are just some of the tapestries that I worked on during my time there. And we worked as teams of weavers to interpret other artists' work into large-scale tapestry there. Funnily though, I became fascinated by shorebirds when I was introduced to them by fellow artist Don Wolseley while I was working at the Australasian Waiter Studies group. Oh, sorry, while I was working at the Australian Tapestry Workshop. So I became interested in shorebirds then before I did science. So I injured my shoulder when I was working at the Tapestry Workshop and realised that weaving wasn't a viable long-term career. So I went back to uni and I studied zoology, where I majored in zoology and did a master's as well as a Bachelor of Science at Melbourne Uni. So when I was working with John on a tapestry commission together, he had also created this beautiful mural that you see on your screen that was unveiled in Melbourne at the time. And it captured the stories of shorebird migration, and like so many other people, I was totally enthralled and fell in love with shorebirds, and wanted to do something to address their declining numbers. So I began volunteering with the Victorian Waiter Studies group in 2014, and we banned and flagged shorebirds around the Victorian coast, and that was led by the late great Clive Minton, who's in the bottom left-hand corner there. So later, my passion grew to include being part of expeditions to Canada shorebirds in northwest Australia as well, along 80 Mile Beach and in Brooms Roebuck Bay as well. And I've now been volunteering in shorebird conservation for over 6 years, and I just love being part of such a passionate and committed community of conservationists. Then 4.5 years ago, I was struck by an idea that changed the course of my life. So at the time, I just moved to Perth to start a new life and a new job at the University of Western Australia. And I'd been speaking with a friend from work the night before about how he and his brother wanted to fly a microlight around Australia and raise money for the Royal Flying Doctors Service. And he told me that it was pretty easy to learn how to fly a microlight and cheap too if you wanted to become a pilot. Well, I'd never flown a plane before ever in my life. I had no childhood dreams of becoming a pilot, and there's no history of aviation in my family either. So the next day, as I was driving to work, I had this idea pop into my head out of nowhere that I could learn to fly a microlight and follow the shorebirds on migration from Australia to Siberia. And I knew when the idea hit me, it was really big and it really scared me as well. I could see that a female pilot learning to fly a microlight and following shorebirds on migration would likely create a spectacle that could bring a lot of attention to shorebirds and the issues that shorebirds face in the flyway. But it took some time for me to actually build up the courage to pursue this idea. It was about a year before, and I didn't start learning to fly until April of 2016. And I went out to York, which is about 200 kilometres east of Perth, to Sky Sports Flying School, and began learning with my flight instructor, Gordon Marshall, who's in the back seat of the microlight there. And for those of you unfamiliar with microlights, they're pretty much flying a powered hang glider. So there's a hang glider wing with a three-wheel trike base that hangs underneath the wing, and it's propelled. Yeah, you've got the propeller on the back, and you're literally hanging on to the control bar of the wing. So that control bar I'm holding on to is directly connected to the wing, and you turn by shifting the wing itself. I went solo a year later and became a qualified recreational pilot, and I have a passenger and cross-country endorsements as well, thanks to a scholarship, an Amelia Earhart scholarship from the 99's International Organisation of Women Pilots, and that covered the costs of my flight training. And while I was in York, I met Russell Duncan from Airborne Australia, which is the company that manufactured the microlight aircraft. And Gordo had just purchased a gyrocopter, which I helped Russell and Gordo assemble. That's the picture on the left. And Gordo told Russell of my plans to fly to Siberia and thought it would be a good idea for me to go to New South Wales and get some experience working in Airborne factory assembling aircraft, which is near Newcastle, about a 2-hour drive north of Sydney. So at the start of 2018, I left my job at the University of WA and I moved to Newcastle, and Airborne Flight Training agreed to sponsor me and let me fly their aircraft for free. And I was able to build up my experience as a pilot flying their aircraft. And this is an image of me flying along the beach near Lake Macquarie, where Airborne Flight Training is based, and flying around the Hunter Valley as well. It's just beautiful. So for 7 months, I worked in the Airborne factory assembling and servicing microlight aircraft, and later Airborne offered these hours to me as credit towards a new plane. And while at Airborne, I was sponsored by Peel Harvey Catchment Council and an anonymous donor, and with money pulled from a crowdfunding campaign I ran in 2017, and Dick Smith, who's a famous Australian aviator, I was able to afford my own microlight aircraft, which you see on the screen at the moment, and that's an airborne impulse sport. And I was fortunate enough to help build and test fly that aircraft myself, which was very exciting. So before doing a big international flight, I wanted to do a flight around Australia and test my piloting capabilities. And I planned to do that originally last year, 2019. And in preparation for that, I wanted to do a recce trip driving around Australia. And shortly after building my aircraft in 2018, we set off in August with the microlight in tow. I went with a friend. And my plan was to get experience flying in different parts of the country and to also promote the flight with local community groups. And in this image, you can see the wing comes off the plane and you can fold it up, and that's what's on top of the vehicle there is the wing folded up, and the trike base is in the trailer. So you can disconnect the two and take it on the road. It's a very transportable aircraft. However, 3 days into that recce trip, I broke my leg when I was shifting our trailer, and the jockey wheel collapsed and fell on my leg. And then 9 weeks after that, in a separate incident, I slipped in the bathroom when I was getting my crutches when we were in Perth, and broke my wrist, and that required surgery. So a month after that as well, my flight instructor and friend and mentor, Gordon, he passed away, and I decided that it was time to postpone and take a break. So it was 5 months before I was able to fly again, and it was bittersweet getting back in the microlight. This is me flying my new trike over White Gum Farm in York, where I first learnt to fly with Gordon. And I thought he would be the one helping me get back in the pilot seat and learning and getting me flying again. That was a bittersweet moment, being able to fly again and not having Gordo there. And at the time, all of these setbacks were very difficult, but they provided me with extra time, and they've resulted in improving my skills and new opportunities as well. So I returned to Newcastle at the start of last year to get back on my feet after all of those crazy things happening all at once. And I'm still based in Newcastle now and still flying out at Lake Macquarie Airport with Airborne there. And I'm now working for BirdLife Australia here in Newcastle as part of their migratory shorebird program. And I'm also working on getting my fixed wing recreational pilot license as well, so I can get a controlled airspace endorsement that I can use when I'm flying the microlight around Australia. And the little plane on the screen, you can see that fixed wing plane. That's what I'm learning to fly at the moment, and I went solo in that one in March. I'm very close to getting my certificate for doing that now. And last year at the Australian Ornithological Conference in Darwin, I was also approached by CSIRO Publishing after they heard my talk on wing threads and asked if I'd like to create a children's book about shorebirds and my flight with me. And I knew just the person to help me write that. The wonderful Jackie Kerin, who you heard speak earlier today. And the book deal was approved last month. We got our contracts last night. It was very exciting. And we're hoping to have that book available to everybody early next year. And I'm really excited to be bringing Jackie's words to life through my illustrations. So that's one of my pictures there. And the book is about my flight and me flying around and telling everyone why shorebirds are awesome. It's a very cute book. So I'm still intending to fly solo around Australia, but the start date's now been postponed until March 2022. And my plan is to depart from Broome in March, when the shorebirds begin their northward migration to the Arctic, and then travelling anti-clockwise around the country. My plan is to stop at schools and libraries along the coast to be able to share the Wing Threads storybook with students and teachers, and I'll also be seeing if I can do a lap of Australia in the time it takes a group of shorebirds fitted with satellite tags by the Australasian Wader Studies Group to fly all the way to the Arctic and back. So the distance around Australia is about 20,000 kilometres, so it's a similar distance to what the birds fly on migration. And I've broken the flight up into 90 stages between 100 and 400 kilometres each. And we'll be able to post my own progress around the country in comparison to the shorebirds on migration. And I have no doubt that they will do a much better job of making those long distance journeys than me. We'll see how it goes, but I've given myself 6 months to do that flight. So I see shorebirds as the living expression of how we're all connected to one another through global ecological networks. As they wing their way on migration, their path is a thread that links over 4 billion people in 23 countries and 4 continents. And on the way, they rely on the health of a lot of different wetland habitats to provide them with the food they need to re-energize, to be fueled when they stop over. So the flyway is like a chain with links in it. And if any one of those links fails, then the whole chain becomes broken. So protecting these wetlands and estuaries is vital for the shorebirds, but for us too, because wetlands provide us with all sorts of ecosystem services too. So wetlands store carbon, which helps mitigate the impacts of climate change. They act like a sponge to absorb water and help filter out and remove pollutants. Mangrove wetlands protect coasts from storm surge, and they also provide livelihood to billions of people around the world. So that's this message that Wingthreads is trying to get out there, is that wetlands are not just for the birds, they're also for us too. And I think shorebird migration teaches us that conservation is a way of caring for all life that includes people, and what better message to share for the theme of birds connect our world on World Migratory Bird Day. And while not everyone cares about shorebirds, most people are inspired by stories of adventure and love cartoons and illustrations. So in this way, the Wingthreads adventure, captured as a children's book, is a vehicle with the potential to engage a wide audience unfamiliar with shorebirds, and in doing so, grow a global community of people who value and want to protect shorebirds and their habitat. So, and this adventure, inspired by shorebird migration, has so far and connected me with so many people, not just here in Australia, but all throughout the flyway, and I hope to share that experience of connection with everyone who engages with the Wingthreads adventure. So I'd like to finish up just by saying thank you to everyone for joining me on the Wingthreads adventure today. I love the power that shorebirds have to connect us, and through our continued shared creative and collaborative effort, it's my dream that one day shorebirds like the bar-tailed godwit and the redneck will become as well known as pandas, orangutans, and blue whales, and deemed just as worthy of protection. So thank you. Thanks, Vivian.
Okay, thanks a lot to Millie. It's really amazing for you to start with living birds and then now flying up to the sky with the birds. It's really great to see you recovered and flying up in the sky again. And we also look forward to have you to see your book Wingthreads in the future. So now I would like to introduce our last performers, Bowerbird Collective, Simone Slattery, the violinist, and Anthony Albrecht, the celloist. They created the Bowerbird Collective in 2017 to explore links between the arts and science and to tell stories using multimedia performance platforms. They are going to bring us today a mini concert called Invisible Connections as a preview of their musical and visual celebration of shorebird migration. So please welcome Simone and Anthony. And I'm going to just start the show.
took off at twilight to capture the dawn. My love wait for me. A star in my pocket, my compass and friend. My love wait for me. The Godwit and curlew, farewell the sun. Said wait for our daughter, her time has come. So I spread my wings and I took to the sky, and I wept for my planet below. How long will this journey go on? Until light awaits in the darkest place, her light awaits. Until light awaits in the darkest place, it waits. She said we have won the light and dark and all of life, said the dawn. In the still of the night time, the dawn said to me, my love, set me free.
Wow, it's really amazing. It's a beautiful combination of music and migratory water birds. So thank you very much, Bowerbird Collective, Anthony and Simone. So let's see if they wanted to say a few words. So Anthony, maybe you have to accept my invitation for your screen. Right. And you have to unmute yourself. No, it's not yet. Yeah, you still have to unmute yourself. It seems like the microphone is not working. No? Yes. Okay.
Hello?
Yeah.
Yay!
So welcome. Thank you for bringing us a wonderful wonderful piece. I will let you say a few words to the audience.
Sure. Hi, everyone. So I'm Simone and this is Anthony, and we are here on King Island in the middle of the Bass Strait. And we're really thrilled to be a part of this fun day, and merry Migratory Bird Day to everyone. And thank you to Vivian and everyone at the Flyway Partnership. So we created this work to help celebrate this fantastic day because we think shorebirds are pretty great, but also because we feel that just like the migratory birds connect our world, so too does music, the universal language. So we feel that bringing these different elements together, just like visual art as well, is a way of enhancing this incredible story and spreading it far and wide. So we hope you enjoyed it.
We also just want to say a huge thank you to everyone who helped us get to this point today. The film you just saw was finished at about, well, 4 a.m. this morning, and that couldn't have happened
later, actually.
Yeah, well, busy in the coronavirus era. But we have Vivian to thank. She's been amazing in dealing with all the technical challenges of this very exciting webinar. And of course, also the wonderful Ayawat at the Bird Conservation Society of Thailand. You guys are very lucky in this webinar because you're getting a sneak preview of the performance, which is actually supposed to be premiering this evening, 5 p.m. Bangkok time or 8 p.m. Sydney time, on YouTube and Facebook via the EAAFP and the Bird Conservation Society of Thailand. I'm sure Vivian will share the links with all of you. And yeah, we just are so grateful for these amazing people passionate about shorebirds who've given us wonderful footage. And yeah, we've had a great time imagining how we could tell this story with their footage and our music. And we hope you enjoy it. We hope you join us again later this evening for Invisible Connections Round 2.
Well, thank you. Please stay here. I am going to invite all the speakers today to join in the Q&A section if there are any. So yeah, please accept the invitation. So yeah, all the presenters are here, and yeah, please raise your questions if there are any, and we will try to bring it to the presenters. So yeah, I got a lot of comments saying amazing, thank you, wonderful work. Yeah, so thank you very much for joining. And I wonder if any of the panelists have anything to want to say to the audience.
Thank you. Thank you for joining us. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and from me too. Thank you, Vivian, for all your hard work, and
oh yes,
and to my fellow artists, and a thank you to all of you out there who we can't see, but who have checked in. It just feels wonderful to know that we're out there, we're connecting, we're talking about birds, and we're not talking about virus.
Yes.
Oh,
indeed. Really
okay, we actually have one question, who is from Bryce New. It's a question to Millie. The question is, do you hope to see the birds in flight while migrating and perhaps record that? So this is a question to you.
Yeah, I don't think I'll actually be flying alongside the birds. They're pretty sensitive to disturbances like that. So I haven't flown alongside them as yet. I've flown alongside other species of birds, mainly raptors and pelicans, and also swallows, but not migratory birds. I'll just be traveling to the places where we find them in Australia, and then later on, hopefully, following their actual migration path through the entire flyway. So, yeah, I won't be flying with the birds themselves, though. If I could get that recorded from the microlight, that would be amazing. But yeah, I think that would be a very difficult thing to do.
Okay, great. And then we have a second question. It's for Kate. The question is from Miriam Potts. The question says, Kate, could you provide the Shorebird project link so that we can find out about upcoming events? So it's your time to advertise your work.
Sure. Miriam, why don't you just email me? My email is just Kate Gorringe-Smith without the hyphen @gmail.com, and I can put you on my mailing list because the Flyway Print Exchange, I don't have any bookings at the moment. Another project that's artists around Australia and New Zealand called the Overwintering Project, and we've got lots of exhibitions lined up for the next, into next year. And there may be changes because of the virus, because some, of course, galleries are shut at the moment, but I can certainly keep you in touch with what's happening. And we've got a Facebook page, and which you can keep in touch with as well. So yeah, thank you so much for asking and for your interest.
Okay, great. Well, there is one other from Sally O'Connor. It's a question to Millie. What is the altitude that you fly up to the sky, I think?
Yeah. So as a recreational pilot, I'm limited to an altitude of 10,000 feet. But most of the time I don't fly higher than 5,000 feet. Yeah, so around here where I am in Newcastle and Lake Macquarie, yeah, flying around at between 1,000 and 3,000 feet most of the time. And there's limitations on that altitude depending on where you are, because there could be controlled airspace around and such, which is the case here with Sydney Airport to the south and Newcastle Airport to the north.
Okay, great. And wow, we suddenly have more questions flooded in. So this is a question from Hannah Hannah. The question is to Anthony and Simone. The musicians have great footages in your video. How are you guys inspired to compose those beautiful sounds on the migratory birds?
Very interesting question, and a tricky one to answer, because these sort of creative processes, I think they develop over a long time. So this project about migratory birds has actually been in our minds and hearts, I guess, for almost 2 years now, but hasn't yet had a chance to take wing, so to speak. And so being asked by Vivian and the rest of the team to produce this video for today has really sort of launched the project in a way, which is fantastic. And the music has developed in a few different ways. The pieces that I composed are sounds that have been flying around in my head for quite a while now. And we're just sort of looking for somewhere to take shape and become more formed. And I think the footage really helped me to solidify those ideas. And then the already composed pieces by Philip Glass and Vivaldi, as soon as we heard those pieces, we knew that for us they really evoked this sense of flight and journey or storytelling. And so we thought they'd be a really great addition to the whole thing. For us, it's really important to include the juxtaposition of old and new in our storytelling, because this story of the birds is also very old but still very new for a lot of us. So we purposely try to explore that realm. And our major work around the migratory birds will also include Indigenous traditional music collected along the flyway, so it'll be even more extensive in the finished product. I hope that sort of answers your question.
Right, thank you. And then we have one question from Hei Song Do. She asked Millie a question. What is the furthest that you have flew before? That's a question to me.
Yeah, okay. So my aircraft has the endurance of about 5 hours, and I fly at about 100 kilometers an hour, or 50 to 60 knots. And the furthest I have flown is about for 2.5 hours. So I have flown up to Old Bar near here and back. 2 separate flights, so altogether it was probably around 5 hours of flying, and it's pretty exhausting, like because it's a very physical aircraft to fly. yeah, it does take it out of you. So there are some physical limits there as well as aircraft limits too.
Oh, okay. Yeah, 5 hour flying. I can't imagine. Yeah. So yeah, we also have questions to Jackie. This question is from Theory. And hello, Jackie. Your story activity is really nice. Do you have other stories on water bird species? It's really useful for awareness raising campaign.
Oh, well, this story I tell as a set of stories, which can either be told as a complete set under the title of Tales from the Flyway. And I tell the stories with my collaborator, classical violinist, Sarah De Pasquale, and she provides a musical background to go with the stories. We don't have any other stories about particular species. In our concept, Tales for the Flyaway, we imagined that we were flying with the little redneck stints from Sandy Point, that we were flying up the flyway and visiting countries on the way. And we asked, what stories might we hear on the way and what countries might we visit? And the first country we visited is Indonesia. And we tell the story of the birth of Garuda, because when I Googled King of the Birds, I wondered what would come up, and up came Garuda. And the story of Garuda is shared in many countries along the flyway. And then we tell another folk tale from Thailand that we found. And all the stories we tell have birds in them, either mythic or, in the case of Tom the Redneck Stint, a real bird. So yeah, I'm still looking and thinking about stories with actual species, but it takes a long time to make a story. So, which Millie and I will be doing, which for Wing Threads. That story will contain, I don't know how many species, Millie, maybe 8, 10 species we might mention.
Probably. Yeah.
Yes. Okay, we're also really looking forward to your new books coming soon. Next, I would like to raise a questions from Jane O'Malley. So I think this question is for everyone. This is, if people would like to be involved with protecting our migratory birds, what can individuals do to raise awareness and try to encourage greater protection of habitats and stop disturbance of birds when they arrive? So this is an open question to all of you.
Can I give an answer?
Yes, please, Kate.
Sorry, Vivian. Hello, Jane. People join their local shorebird group because they'll know where the habitat is and what the best measures are. But there's also this really great awareness raising community art project that was launched by the Miranda Shorebird Centre in New Zealand called The Flock. He's instigated a beautiful one. I think Millie's been part of it. And where you get people, if you can, there are templates available in the shape of migratory shorebirds. You can ask community members to paint them, and then you stick them in the ground when you're trying around tent or place. And it's a really lovely way to draw people's attention and bring people together, because you can tell people about the birds while they're painting the birds, but then when you stick them in the ground, you've got like an instant art installation that draws people in to wonder what it is, brings the people who've been involved in making it, and gives a forum and a little focus to a place to talk about the birds and the habitats. But Millie has got more ideas, I'm sure, because she works for BirdLife now, don't you, Millie?
Well, I was putting my BirdLife hat on, actually, Kate. And you know, if in Australia anyway, you can contact BirdLife's National Shorebird Monitoring Program, and you can get involved in helping to survey the birds in your local area. And there's actually a shorebird ID workshop coming up on May 15th that you can register for to learn how to ID shorebirds and help contribute to bird data and collecting survey data on shorebirds around Australia. The other thing with shorebirds, when you're out and about, if you're going to go and see them, the main thing is to minimise the amount of disturbance to the birds as much as possible. So they need that extra energy to do their huge migrations, and to also, because they molt into their breeding and non-breeding plumage as well after doing those huge flights, that's a high energy expenditure. So if you can keep your distance so you're not causing them to fly up unnecessarily, do things like keep your dog on a leash, and if you're in a car or in your boat or whatever, keep your distance. And yeah, making sure you take your rubbish home with you, all of those sorts of things are all going to go towards helping to preserve their habitat and reduce disturbance to the birds as well.
I was going to say, I don't know how it works in other countries, but where I live, we have a couple of conservation rangers working in our area, and that's how I got involved. I became friends with the conservation rangers, and one day, I don't know if you're listening, Ranger Andrew, 5 years ago now, Andrew was saying, oh, we do all this work and we can't seem to be able to get the information beyond those people who are already interested or alert to the environment and nature. And he muttered something about, oh, it'd be good if the arts could get on board. And that's when I started to think, well, what skills, and maybe there's people, some of you out there who have got skills, whatever they are, and you think, well, what skills have I got that I could use to help raise awareness? It could be anything from making the wooden birds that Millie was talking about, and Kate, to be painted by the community, or it could be creating a musical piece like Simone and Anthony. Or in my case, one of our rangers said, Jackie, I really want to work through the children and the young people, because they're the ones that will be inheriting, they will be the stewards of these habitats in the future. So if we can get them early. So yeah, I put quite a bit of energy into thinking about what can I do that will engage the children. So that was my journey into doing something.
Okay, well, maybe we can go to our last questions, which is also to all of you. We have questions from Paloma. Paloma Norongha asked to you all, we have heard so many about very inspiring local initiatives. What could be done to link initiatives across border and creative throughout the ideas? This is from Haesung's questions. Haesung, those questions. Yeah, maybe I repeat again. We have heard so many about very inspiring local initiatives. What could be done to link initiatives across the border, and any creative thoughts and ideas?
Oh, I can jump in. Oh, go, Anthony, you go.
Well, we're super excited to keep developing musical connections, and ultimately it will be a 1-hour performance that we will play live. So rather than joining you on our iPad, we'll join you in a concert hall near you. So I think, like the other people in this panel, we're very interested in connecting with communities, and so using music and this storytelling medium that we've chosen, we're hoping to tour around Australia and also to tour internationally and bring people together to think about shorebirds, and ideally to become emotionally connected to them. We feel like it's going to be important to invite politicians and possibly people who might be interested to financially support conservation efforts. And if our concerts result in some significant outcomes for conservation, then we'll be really happy. But if on the other hand we just make a bunch of people feel more connected to shorebirds and their habitat, then that's also really special.
Great. Millie?
Yeah, I was just going to say, with Wingthreads, one of the things I'd like to do with the book is share that through a sister schools program. And I've been talking with Dean Leong from BirdLife International about creating that. And I know there's a sister schools program already set up. I think it's through an organisation in Alaska. So yeah, I think there's a really big opportunities there through education as well to connect internationally through our communities. And when I'm doing the flight around Australia as well, I'll be sharing that adventure via YouTube as well, so people can connect, hoping to be able to live stream from the aircraft itself, and also doing those live Facebook lives and things like that on the way to engage with people all throughout the world and answer questions and stuff like that. So I think technology today, it's just been highlighted, you know, with the COVID crisis, you know, just how connected you can be with technology internationally these days, and taking advantage of that wherever we can.
Yeah, I'd like to add too about making connections and building friendships along the flyway. Don't be shy. I was in Singapore for the Singapore Storytelling Festival a few years ago, and when I told Kate I was going to Singapore, I said, "How do you know anyone from the wetlands there that so I could go to the wetlands and meet fellow souls who are interested in connecting and learning and sharing what we know about the birds." And Kate introduced me to Puisan, and I've been there twice now and had tours of the wetlands. And I find, and I've also been to went to a shorebird conference in Hobart, that's down here, 18 months ago, 2 years ago, and I just find it's a generalisation, but it's a generalisation I think is true. There's something about the bird people; their hearts are so open, so hospitable and welcoming. I know when I met Puisan and the staff at Sungai Buloh, I honestly felt I'd known them all my lives, and many people out there who want to give so much to the environment. So yeah, don't be shy, reach out. And if you're traveling, once the travel is lifted and you have the opportunity, find out where the places are and visit people, and the joy then also of the friendships and the reciprocity. We've had Puisan down here and his family and friends in Melbourne at Sandy Point. So yeah, don't be shy, reach out. And don't let continents and oceans and languages and cultures get in the way, because the birds don't.
How about Kate? Do you have something?
I was going, yeah, thank you, Vivian. I was just going to say, I'm not sure what the role of the person who asked the question is, whether they're on sort of more science side of things, or whether they're, you know, a passionate bird watcher, or whether they're an artist. But I think the thing is to, just like, you know, when you're considering the flyway, it's important to try as much as possible to ignore the borders. Don't limit yourself to just trying to contact people in your own, you know, interest circle of contacts, because if you can bring together the scientific community with the artistic community wherever you live, then that doubles your, you know, your reach, and it reaches a whole lot of new people, and, you know, and then invite school teachers. And I think the thing is to bring as many people together to address the questions of how to get in touch with people, because this is sort of the spreading the communication and the ideas just brings such a richness to the stories that we're trying to tell, and the, you know, we're trying to create wonder. We're not just telling stories, we're trying to make people make connections and take these words into their lives and make them a priority in how they act and how they vote and where they put their money, and, you know, where you might choose to live, which is a big ask. So the more people who are involved, and the more you can share your own passion within your own group and within other groups, I think just talk to everyone.
Don't be shy.
Yeah.
Yes, that's how I reach out to you all. I did not shy myself to reach out to invite.
Thank you,
Yes,
Vivian.
yes, thank you again to all the speakers for bringing us this inspiring and enjoyable webinar. I'm so happy that many of you stay, although we are over and running a little bit. So also thank you very much for everyone for joining us today. Please note that there are you can follow EAAFP activities in our webinar. And actually, there will be, as Anthony and Simone has promoted, there will be one more chance to hear the mini concert by them today at 5 p.m. Thailand time or 8 p.m. Australia time. So click here. We also put everything on our website and our Facebook and our social media, so you can click on these links to follow our activities. So please follow us on our website and social media channels. Once you leave today's webinar, you will receive a follow-up email with a survey on the presentation, and it will be we will be appreciated if you would complete it and provide your feedback to us. And this email will also include a link to view the recording of today's webinar. You will also we'll also share this recording to YouTube later on, as many of you have asked it. I also included all the 4 presenters' websites into the chat panel. So if you want to follow them and see what other stories, what other songs, what other artworks they are doing, please have a look. And these information are also on our websites. So on behalf of EAAFP and our presenters, thank you for joining us today. Your continuous support and interest are truly encouraging to all our conservation work and to save the migratory water birds in the wetlands. So please feel free to reach to us via email. Don't be shy and follow our channels. Have a good day. Happy World Migratory Bird Day. Bye.